Bug Fables is a game about a lot of different things. Family, friendship, charity. In a single word, it's about connections. Which is why in this challenge, we're not gonna do any of that. Cause we don't give a darn about our reputation. No quest, fights only, final destination. I mean, Bug Fables the Everlasting Sapling. Anyway, the point behind this challenge is to not accept any quest at all throughout the entire game. If we are forced to accept the quest, however, we cannot complete it. This challenge will be done on hardest mode. If you wonder at all what that means, check the description box down below this video. Chapter 1 was rather uneventful. We rescue Leaf, and after a bit of puzzle platforming, we fight Spooter. As close as this fight was, I really did not feel like I was in any real danger. Though I may have to owe it to the fact that Spooter's AI was actually pretty bad this time around. Like, so often he tried to hang from the ceiling, and it cost him so many chances to hurt V, it's kind of sad. Once again, we send this lesser bug to the great beyond. After delivering the artifact to Elizabeth II and making our way to Golden Settlement, we fight a Wasp Trooper that's bullying Neolith. For Kabu, this encounter was personal. Upon reaching Golden Settlement, I did some cooking before fighting the Acolyte Aria. This fight could not have went better. Once again, I go with my tried and true combo of Leaf and Kabu for this fight, because even though people love using V here, I just don't. RNG was very kind to me using Icefall here. The chance to freeze both won me a free turn to spy and a free turn to heal to get more TP back at the same time. Even for hardest mode, this was very smooth sailing. It's a good thing that to compensate, Zasp and Moptiva just had to try and stir up some doo-doo. Now, I thought I had everything figured out, but it turns out I was grossly underprepared. You see, I meant to bring a bunch of TP restoring items to get myself to use Hurricane Toss more, but I didn't have any. That being said, that would not be as big of a problem if I did not forget the other item I really wanted, an Abomination. While I had nothing to restore TP with, I had oodles of HP restoring items. And my plan was to drop both Zasp and Moptiva to below 10 HP, then if either Leaf or Cobb will be above 10 HP, using the Abomination, and win just like that. But I couldn't do that because, of course, I didn't have any Abominations to use. So instead of doing this flight and ending it in a flash, I had to box with them. And so I did, which wasn't too bad because I had plenty of items to use, but it was really freaking awkward. At the very least, this did shock me to amply prepare for Venus Guardian. Kabu's high HP and ability to ignore defense was invaluable in this fight. And while he was attacking, I had both V and Leaf focus on supporting him. Once the Guardian was airborne, however, I immediately switched my gears up. Instead, V is now the attacker. And thanks to how this fight was programmed, her Hurricane Toss is absolutely devastating. There was this teeny tiny sour spot though. See, I want to get the Venus Guardian's HP down, but not while it's on the ground do I want it to reach phase 3, because on that turn, Venus will summon a Venus Bud to heal it. At this point, it was pretty much just touch and go. I want to get its HP down, so I kept using single attacks, and that was really it. And in between seeing whether or not the phase 3 was triggered, I kept using V's Secret Cess to keep her teammates safe. Once I saw that dialogue, I knew it was time to go for the kill. Yeah, it has 17 HP left, but that doesn't really matter. Hurricane Toss does 10 damage unboosted, and then Kabu's Heavy Strike will do 4 and then 3 damage on the second attack. I'd say thank God for this food, but considering the boss we're fighting, that's probably disrespectful. Two chapters down and currently deathless so far, and I'm looking to continue to streak through the abandoned Wasp ambush as well. All this by Abomination and we'll be good I don't have it. Okay, well this fight's gonna be really freaking hard then. And since this is after chapter 2, they have an additional +1 attack on top of the +1 they already get from hardest mode, so maybe I'll let the burglar steal something so it can run away, and it stole the one item I cannot afford to lose. That went very wrong way too freaking quickly. So I backtrack, get my Abomination that I prepared just for this freaking fight by the way, come back and I use it to nuke them all. They call me Duke. I'm not taking that joke. Duke Nukem, more like Puke Nukem. Now this run has been going pretty fast all things considered, and you probably noticed that's because we're not fighting Monsieur Scarlet. And well, yeah, that also means no access to the Underground Tavern because, as we all already know, Monsieur Scarlet is not only an optional mini-boss, but it's an optional mini-boss locked behind a quest. And because of this challenge rules, that's off limits. So no Underground Tavern, no spy cards, and no bounty rewards. So yeah, a lot of options are just completely gone in this challenge. In any case, the honey factory is coming up soon. I am just always dreading this area. The idea of being trapped in a place where you can't go back to get more items if you absolutely needed them is just terrifying to me. So in preparation, I went to fight some golden seedlings, get myself some tangy berries, some more money, and with that money, the most important thing, agaric shrooms. These little morsels will pair up wonderfully with Shock Trooper, because as commonly is said, B33 is not a fair fight, so I'm not gonna fight it fair either. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, we also have a Honey Nation, and this is not a slouch by any stretch either. Yeah, if you couldn't quite already tell, Hardest is not kind of players to rank up HP a lot, or at least early on, players that try to rely on defensive strategies. It just doesn't work unless you have stuff like Shock Trooper to rely on, and even then, you need your own numbing status, because the boss's numbing status will numb you for too long. I figured from here I just spam Frigid Coffin, because that works for everyone, why not just for me too? But no, instead I got 2 freezers off of Icefall, just to clear up those Obama honeys that were constantly getting spawned. But because of those freezes, we were able to keep getting our health back, which, you know what, is a good thing, because I really don't want to rely on Frigid Coffin if I can help it. The less we can rely on luck, the better, and as if that wasn't bad enough that we had to worry about this boss, the B33 boss is way more luck reliant, and I can't do anything about that. I don't even have to commentate this, the damage just speaks for itself. Now, if it makes you feel any better, me and my chat did agree to ban the use of agaric shrooms and Shock Trooper because we thought it was too boring. But that's for after this boss and Chapter 4. This had to be by far the closest fight we've had the entire challenge. And it was a close fight after 5 continuous losses to this boss over and over and over again. The damage it did was raw, high, and it flat out stung like a bumblebee. Muhammad Ali's got nothing on this drone. Do you see this laser right here? If B33 uses it too often, we lose and there's nothing we can do about it. And without Favor 1 to increase V's attack power, B33 will get plenty of chances to actually use it. Not only do we get the super block a lot just to survive, but we have to also super block the few times it uses the laser to be able to survive that, and if it uses the laser too often, we're dead anyway. If not for Shock Trooper, I have no idea how we survived this fight. And like I said before, we only barely survived this fight. Just look at this. The attempt before I won, I would have won if I had the TP to use Taunt, but I didn't, and V got knocked out. And the summon B-Boop just spelled disaster. But then there's the attempt I did win, and take note, this is my final agaric shroom. So I revived V, I dodged the missile that was delayed, doing basically anything possible so that whether or not the B-Boop attacks either V or Kabu, they would both be able to survive the attack. And then I just clutched the victory. Like, I played perfectly from this point forward, and if I had to go one more turn without any more agaric shrooms, then yeah, I'd be trapped. I could not have played better even if I wanted to. So just a fair warning for you kids back at home, don't try this at home. Cause if you know me, I'm a certified bug Fables professional. If that actually existed. At least, I think so. Mother Chomper! So we're actually very lucky, because this is one of the very few bosses that we can fight under these rules, because she's not locked behind the quest. And even though we can't use Favorite One, we can't use Deep Taunt because it's a horrible reward for beating a Honey Nation. With our tried and true strategy of using agaric shrooms and Shock Trooper, we are able to very easily dispatch Mother Chomper, and that gets us TP Core, the only copy of the meta that we'll be able to get in the game. But most importantly, we got Princess back. Enchanting her may be an achievement, but it's not a quest. Soon enough though, our little detour did in fact come to an end, and we had to fight Astophiles. My max TP is pretty low, and Astophiles bans the use of items in this fight. So I used the TP Core Metal Gun from Mother Chomper as well as Meditation which I found in the Lost Sands to help make it stretch. The real stars here though were Deep Taunt and Tardigrade Shield. Yes, you heard me right, Tardigrade Shield is being used in a fight for once. Its advantage over Bubble Shield Light here is that I can just block every individual hit. And I still take 0 damage, so there really is no reason not to use this medal. This leaves V perfectly safe to use Berserker and keep attacking, and Princess helps pick up the slack too. And this strategy works surprisingly well. Unfortunately, these darn vermin bandits stole all my money, so I have no choice but to use my bedbug to heal. And to be fair, does anyone else ever really use a bedbug? I see a chance, I'm gonna take it, y'all. Now then, Dune Scorpion. Oh boy, what a brawl this was. I was actually really feeling hardest for this fight, especially when the AoE rock throw hits everybody for a lot of damage. And sometimes being incapacitated through Shock Trooper is never a pleasant time either. Honestly, it's a good thing I have a bunch of items, even if a lot of them aren't very powerful, because altogether, they allowed us to win this fight on the first attempt. Though it wasn't just the items, it was also Leaf's frigid coffin skill. Yeah, I hate to say it, but it did bail me out big time, so I guess I better be thankful. But not as thankful as I am for Princess for getting us her first KO under her belt. Who's a good girl? Who's a good girl? All that was left for Chapter 4 was just the Watcher, which honestly was not hard. Half the time, he can't even touch my main attacker V. And when I actually did run out of Agaric shrooms, it was too late for the Watcher. Even with only V left alive, we were able to take this home no problem. Though I will admit, I felt just a little bit dissatisfied with how this fight went. So much so that I agreed with my stream chat, or more specifically Light, and decided from this point forward to ban the use of Shock Trooper and Taunt on Kabu. We decided on this because A, this game actually has a chance to be difficult, and B, it wouldn't be fun for you to watch. As I'm sure quite a few of you that clicked this video want to see me suffer, so there you go. Now, because of the nature of this challenge, we can't fight very many optional bosses, and very few of the bosses that we can fight really have an incentive for us to bother with. One of the very few exceptions here is the Seedling King, but before we fight him, we need to prepare first. Now, by this challenge's rules, I'm not allowed to accept any quest that I'm not required to do. That being said, if a quest is forced on me to accept, the rules just say we can't complete the quest. This becomes relevant after Chapter 2 is completed, where we are forced to accept Leaf's request. And contrary to popular belief, the quest is not completed upon defeating Zomoth, it's actually completed after reuniting Leaf with his family. Which means we get Ice Rain. In addition to one more thing that will be absolutely critical going forward in this challenge, but not quite relevant yet. So Seedling King was a problem. Not only is he a freaking bulldozer of a boss, but his underlings put in a lot of work to force me to really get good at blocking. Or at least, they did until I stopped being stupid and started using Bubble Shield Light over Tardigrade Shield. But what did I say in my Leaf Only challenge? I'm not that smart. Either way, I didn't have a reliable way of winning this fight. I kinda just needed things to really go my way. In addition to getting very liberal with my use of Hard Charge, because, well, it's literally the only metal I can use to increase my attack power, which honestly feels like cruel irony because it's like this game has forced me to learn how to use Hard Charge. Gee, thanks Bug Fables. So this is really my punishment for making Hard Charge as a B tier metal. I will be made to see the light of Hard Charge and see it as my lord and savior. Anyway, I had to have a plan to close out this fight with the Seedling King, and I came in Frostbite. This metal has the potential to afford a lot of extra damage and give you extra turns for free. But for it to work, I need the Seedling King to cooperate, namely in him not using his hard seeds and Kabu when he's frozen, and ideally ramming into only him to do the most damage to himself possible. This did eventually work, but not without a lot of losses, which was only really made worse because, well, I'm not using Shock Trooper. But on the bright side, we now have access to Seedling Haven, which not only will make grinding significantly faster, but it also means more easy to get Tangy Berries, which right now is critical. Because trust you me, we're gonna need a lot of tanginess in our lives. Surely you remember that we can't use crispy donuts because those are left behind a quest. Well, it just so happens that an alternative recipe exists in Tangy Jam, an item that restores 12 TP and cures paralysis. It's like they always say, when life gives you lemons, enjoy them because lemons are freaking awesome. And who's they? Me. I like lemons. Coming up is the Chapter 5 boss, the Beast, and I'll be honest, I was dreading this moment. And why wouldn't I? This is the first boss barring the Seedling King, which I'm fighting without Shock Trooper and Taunt. So to put it mildly, I feel a lot more vulnerable here. I realized that because so many bosses have defense and they're also really high in their defense, Kabu would be my best attacker by far. Meanwhile, Leaf is using his higher HP to pass buffs of Hard Charge onto Kabu, and V functions as my healer. So I had a game plan, but I was worried if it was actually sustainable. And seeing the Beast has a whopping 95 HP max, even though I only have to take out 85 to win this fight, or at least get to the final part of it, yeah, I was scared. Nevertheless, not knowing what else to do, I went at this fight and gave it all I had, and I learned something from this. So I started getting really reliant on Frozen Drill because I saw just how much damage it was doing. But of course, my TP isn't that high, and I really want to be able to use as many items as possible so I don't have to stay too low. So I thought to give Leaf Shock Trooper because I can't use Taunt with Shock Trooper in this challenge anymore, but it was still very much an option with protecting Leaf. And as it turns out, if a bug is afflicted by a status element that renders him or her unable to act, it actually will reset how many turns they can attack their next turn. For the sake of this battle, keep this in mind. If I have Leaf relay his turn to Kabu, he'll have 0 turns. If Kabu uses Frozen Drill, he will still have 1 turn left, but Leaf will have -1 turns. And the very next turn, Leaf will have 0 turns. It's like if Leaf had only 1 turn and he used Bubble Shield on everybody, and why he can't act the next turn. But by using an Agaric Shroom to numb Leaf for 1 turn while he's protected by Shock Trooper, he will get his 1 turn back. And so I found myself using Hard Charge a bunch to give it to Kabu so that he could keep attacking for a lot of damage in 1 turn, and then restore my TP with using Agaric Shrooms on Leaf while keeping him safe, mind you, because of the numbing ability from Shock Trooper, and repeatedly being able to rinse and repeat this strategy. It actually worked pretty dang great. And once the beast's HP fell low enough, well, I just used Frost Poly on Kabu, had Frostbite activate, and mere seconds later, we took this fight home. First try and everything. But yeah, that was actually a pretty cool thing to learn at the very moment I needed to learn it. This leads us then to march victoriously into the Wasp Kingdom and completely get pwned. Everything started okay, until the Wasp Driller stopped getting frozen. And one by one, all of my bugs went down. What I'm most ashamed of is how I lost Kabu, because I thought I was able to block all the rocks, but I guess I couldn't. And missing just 1 super block on Ultimax himself knocked me out. And I was doing so well. So I tried again, though I feel like I did worse than last time because I used the Guard Shroom on Leaf and he didn't have Shock Trooper equipped. But hey, I got lucky. And hey, Princess got another last attack, so we may as well celebrate that too. But not gonna lie, that was demoralizing. Around this time, I asked my viewers if they wanted to see me do Chapter 6 or fight Zomoth, and a lot of them wanted to see Zomoth, so there we go. And defeating Zomoth is nigh impossible if he summons anything too dangerous. But forget about that, my luck in the first attempt was absolute garbage. First off, look at that HP stat, 127. And unlike the beast, Zomoth is arguably much more deadly as far as how much damage it can do. And would you believe if I said that the freaking thing attacked the Leaf first when he's freaking paralyzed with trauma? Not only does that put us at a massive disadvantage because Leaf is my star attacker here, but I really wanted Kabu to get poisoned. But that's my fault and my blunder for not using Taunt. I just assumed that because you're in front and you have a 60% chance of getting hit, you should be getting hit by at least 1 Blight Magic projectile. Silly me, I guess. But truth be told, it doesn't even matter. Because to turn out of your scripted 3-turn Zomoth, you summon a Bloat Shroom, which immediately cancels all 5 damage that we did to you, in addition to hurting us for altogether 5 damage. We physically could not keep up, it was just too much damage and too much HP to hit through. And the 7 zombie didn't help either. The very next attempt, none of that happened. Leaf was spared, instead both V and Kabu got attacked. And generally speaking, I had enough wiggle room to have Leaf keep using Hard Charge and then have him use Ice Ray to do a bunch of damage in little time. We were able to take Zomoth down to 1 HP thanks to Antlion Jaws. And the 1 HP he had left was taken out by Princess. Just gotta say it here and now, Princess be making the rounds. But our reward is Block Heal, the meta which in my opinion is the only reason that this challenge is actually possible. See what I mean when we get to the final boss. For now, I decided on making some more items for later in the game. And by later in the game I mean, well, the final boss. The fight with that boss will be very long and very, very painful. And I don't think I'll be able to survive off of Leaf Omelets alone. For this reason, I looked into some dark cherry recipes, and making my first cherry pie, I immediately recognized that this would be a very advantageous item to have. 8 HP may not be a lot on its own, but spread across your entire team, it actually is a lot. And the extra TP is at least appreciated. The only problem is that how many dark cherries we can get is finite. So we would have to be very careful with choosing when we use the dark cherry recipes, for fear of not having enough and having no chance of actually winning. So in Chapter 6 bosses, there really isn't much to talk about. Primal Weaver was whatever, just Hard Charge and Ice Rain, you know, rinse and repeat using my Frostbite on Kabu, not very threatening. Actually, the most noteworthy thing that even happened in this fight was that my internet went out. And so I had nothing to show as far as how Ice Ray managed to KO the Primal Weevil, which on its own sucked, but it had 25 HP left, and my Ice Ray was doing 6 damage per hit. So I have no idea if whether or not what happened was that one of my Ice Rays managed to freeze the Primal Weevil, and therefore I had perfect damage, or I did 24 damage, leaving the Primal Weevil with only 1 HP left, and then Princess got the KO. But to be safe... And now for the Colosseum in the Termite Capital, where I have to be honest, I really hate how I played through this area. First were the Forsaken Landers, which weren't too bad, though my Ice Rain aim was really off today. But then there was Cross and Poi, which I absolutely hated how this fight went. Thanks to Hardest Mode giving Poi extra HP, I couldn't really tell when he was going to get KO'd. I was doing all this damage thinking, okay, he's gotta go down soon, but he just never did. Not until I spied on him and then found he had only 1 HP left.
One! What? What the hell?
But he and Cross were also doing a lot of damage to me, and I really could not keep up for very long without using items, so I used the Cherry Pie. And even then I had to get lucky because I used my Sleeping Needles to get myself some extra time, and I managed to win the fight with Princess KOing him. If I sound flustered here, it's because I am. I feel like a freaking fool. Ironically, Zasp and Moptiva was the easiest part here. I put Zasp to sleep, and then it went ape on Moptiva like there was no tomorrow. I couldn't beat her on 2 turns of Zasp unable to react, but I managed to freeze him, and well, that's all she wrote. And I say she because she, Moptiva, went down. Then it was just Zasp who really couldn't do anything to me, and I made sure to taunt so that he couldn't taunt V also. Which I actually was very likely to be right on doing that because, well, he did use taunt. And the fight really did not last much longer after that. So as embarrassed as I am, at least one good thing came out of the Coliseum today. There's not much left to go, so I grind some extra money, and I get ready for the Giant's Lair and the fight with Ultimax tank in the Rubber Prison. I also beat Riz, who honestly isn't hard at all. Taunt and Frostbite completely shut him down, and Bubble Shield like protects from all of his bombs too, so this fight is literally impossible to lose. Time for the Ultimax tank. My game plan here was by and large the same as it was for the Beast, except here I really doubled down on the Frost Pies. You can't freeze the Ultimax tank, but the recoil afforded by Frostbite is immense, especially when your means of dealing extra damage also heals you. Compared to the Beast, this fight honestly felt easier. I even had a psychic moment where I actually predicted that Ultimax would attack V because her health was so low, so I used Bubble Shield like to protect her instead of Leaf. And wouldn't you know it, he attacks V! There wasn't much else to this fight, so I just humiliated him by using Frozen Drill with a hard charge boost on him. And yeah, this guy is done. Finally we reach Chapter 7, and my god. Oh no, excuse me, my goddess. Zomoth was annoying, Seedling King was difficult, the Beast was scary. You put all 3 together, and you get Chapter 7's Deadlands, and this is freaking terrifying. Our problems here start with the Deadlander ambush. Unlike most of my challenges, this is actually very difficult for me. So to start off, let me let you in on something. I got myself the Super Pepper, and I gave it to V because I thought she'd be my best attacker from this point forward, and that was a big mistake. No, here I really wish I had Leaf with that Super Pepper instead. Because Ice Rain is in general going to be a lot more useful at this point forward than V's Hurricane Toss ever can hope to be. As it stands, she's only barely good enough to knock out the Deadlander Beta before it can use an AoE attack on us all. And it's important that she can do that because both the Alpha and Gamma can do monumental damage to us, even if we block. Though, then again, thinking about it, giving the Super Pepper to V did have its own merits, because we did not have the TP to spam Ice Rain anyway. And yeah, I could use items here, but for some stupid reason, I just had a bunch of Frost Pies in my inventory. So mushing through with items wasn't really a good option for me. I guess I could have went back to get some more, but I was lazy, and yeah, this really bit me in the butt. I can't afford for Cabo to go down too early. If he does, Leaf and V have no chance of survival. I mean, yeah, I have block heal, but I cannot be expected to consistently block every attack. I am just not perfect. It wasn't until I got so desperate that I started tapping into the potential of Life Cast. I gave it to Leaf so that he could rely on his reserves of HP to keep Kabu safe. And because I really couldn't rely on using V to attack, I ended up having to let Maki help me out here. Both Maki and Princess both had to be the ones to chip down the Deadlander Gamma, which was the last thing I had to KO. Meanwhile, I had Team State Valve just do whatever they could to buy out time for them both. See, boys and girls, this is why you have to prepare amply before you get into these really hard boss fights, otherwise you end up like me and you end up being a circus act. This goes without saying though, but the fire constructs were no problem whatsoever. Compared to the Deadlanders, they're less than nothing. However, that was just the appetizer, the firebending foes they were. Now, we have the Wasp King. To say this fight was hard would be an insult. Given my options and the items I was able to bring in for this fight, it was an utter nightmare. The first thing I did was go to scavenge as many of these dark cherries I could find and make some miracle shakes and cherry pie. This is also where knocking out the Seedling King finally comes into play, because I need to use Seedling Haven to get myself some extra tangy berries. When you cook a tangy berry with a honey drop, you get Tangy Jam, an item that restores 12 TP and heals paralysis at the same time. It's basically a better crispy donut, but much more expensive. And as a last resort, I also brought one more item, an Abomination, because if I'm right, this item will make the difference between life and death. And worst case scenario, I can rage quit a fight if I really want to. Now the Wasp King hits like a truck, obviously. What do you expect when you're a bug and you're weak to fire? But the really scary thing is just how you have to manage your resources so carefully. I won't sugarcoat it, you need to use items in this fight to survive. A lot of his attacks can 2-hit KO you, even with my HP as high as it is, and Kabu's taunt won't carry me forever because of the AoE he has. Our only saving grace is just Hurricane Toss itself. That combined with Hard Charge can do a lot of damage in very little time and actually makes this fight much more survivable as a result. But that alone won't be enough, especially for the final boss, the Everlasting King. This is where stuff gets real. So get this, the Everlasting King restores all of his HP on hardest mode every time he begins a new phase. On normal and hard mode, he doesn't. He restores most of his HP back, but not all of it. But here, all 75 points return to him, and it makes this fight so much harder as a result. That's a lot of extra HP to have to fight back through just to get it back down to 10, but that alone doesn't make this fight so unbearably hard. Though what really puts this fight into being one of its own as far as difficulty is the artifacts that are summoned. In addition to their high HP, they also do respectively high damage and have a lot of defense too. But most importantly, V is terrible at dealing with multiple targets at once, and those extra hits will take a very severe toll on Kabu's survivability. Speaking of Kabu, he's by Stonewall once again, using Taunt to try and redirect as much as possible. However, that's not necessarily all. I also relied on Reverse Toxin and Eternal Venom to make Kabu self-sustaining. This way, V can keep using Hurricane Toss with the TP, but Kabu uses his HP, which is constantly being replenished by Reverse Toxin to keep taunting instead. As for Leaf, he's using items and he's passing charge. But as I said, it just wasn't enough. No matter how long I tried to last, no matter how much damage I dealt, I couldn't get the Everlasting King down to past half of his final phase. Mind you, this was after almost 2 hours of attempts. I couldn't do it. And for a moment, I genuinely started feeling like this was impossible to do. However, if this was possible, it's definitely the hardest challenge I've done so far on this channel. The sheer level of endurance you need to survive in this fight is absolutely ridiculous, and V just is not equipped to deal with this properly either. After getting as far as I possibly could, playing as well as I possibly could hope for, with actually pretty good RNG to boot, I gave up. I couldn't do it. I simply did not have the items to last in the fight. And for the first time since my choppy only challenge which I tried on this channel before, I couldn't beat Bug Fables the Everlasting Sapling. On a live stream, I later on tried doing this fight offline, but I had to make some adjustments. First and foremost, I needed Paton's help. I resolved this time to give my Super Pepper to Leaf instead of V because he actually has Ice Rain which does a lot more damage. I also gave Kabu my Iron Seed, and I designated the role of healer to V instead. It took a lot of reshuffling my medals, rearranging my stats, and cooking more items to experiment with, but can we beat the Wasp King and Everlasting King once and for all under these challenge conditions? Let's find out. It's showtime! The first thing I tried to do was fight the Wasp King with Leaf as my attacker, and surprisingly, it didn't actually work as well as I'd hoped. Because of just how expensive Ice Rain is to use, I would frequently find myself running out, and I could not afford to use too many items this early on in the fight. And Kabu's block heal will only carry him so far too. It wasn't until I got to my third attempt, however, where I decided then that Leaf just would not be able to cut it. The only problem with going back to V though is that she doesn't have the Super Pepper anymore. As such, her damage output has been hindered. However, her being able to attack much more frequently without having to use as much TP is a very big boon. And she generally can still be a very good healer even if she's also attacking. It took 4 attempts though, and my 4th attempt was also one where I only won by the skin of my teeth. My situation could not be more dire. I was so close to surviving the first phase, but Kabu was my only bug still left alive. Even then, he was almost dead, and because of life cast, Pep Talk was not an option. My only hope was to super block every attack the Wasp King threw at me and just survive. And somehow, I actually did it! leading us to the fight with the Everlasting King. And might I just add, it's a very good thing that we can lose the fight on purpose and rearrange your medals after the fact. It's time to give Leaf an honest-to-God try to really show this bully who's the king around here. The strategy here was simple. Have V use Hard Charge on herself, then pass it to Leaf, but also have V be able to heal herself before she got knocked out because of her low HP. I actually saw myself use Heal Plus here because I wanted V to have all her HP come back, so she can Hard Charge for 5 damage on herself and then heal it back with her secret stash. It's actually a really effective strategy. And because of the immense power of Ice Rain when buffed by Hard Charge, the artifacts cannot survive a single turn after Ice Rain is used. Everything was going absolutely great, until we got to phase 3, and the Everlasting King summons both of the artifacts at once. Ice Rain's damage was pitiful because I had just used it to attack, and Kabu got KO'd, so I really could not do much. It was at this moment, the Abomination I brought with me ended up fulfilling its purpose, as Leaf had more than enough HP to survive the blast, and it gave me the perfect opportunity to heal everybody with a Miracle Shake and get back on my feet. And just like that, we are now in business. Before long, we were ready to issue the coup de grace, using one more tanky gem to get one more good hit out of Ice Rain with a max charge thanks to V, and we let it rain. The only item we had left was a single cherry pie, ending this absolutely brutal boss fight once and for all. However, this may not necessarily be the end of the challenge. As I'm sure you're all already aware, there are lots of bosses that are unaccounted for, most of the bounties, Team Mackie and Team Slacker, and a few select others that are also locked behind quests. And well, they're not in this video. That's because the Everlasting King is the final boss as far as we can go without breaking this challenge's rules. Now, I might make a follow-up video fighting all the other bosses we haven't challenged yet, but as it stands, that's simply not a priority. If you want to see them in action, well, let me know and I'll do it, sure. But as is, I think this video was plenty long enough. So if you still want some more Bug Fables action, why not click this video on the screen right now and watch another Bug Fables challenge I've done. For my birthday, I actually did a second Leaf Only challenge. So if you're interested, go and check it out, and I'll see you there. And with that said, thank you for watching.